Hello and welcome to the Micro MBA session 4. This time we're going to be talking about organisational sustainability. Hello, my name's Dr. Alex Benson. We're from the University of Chester and I'm joined today by my wonderful co-host Trevor.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Trevor Murray. I'm here, the MBA director at the University of Chester, and today I'm going to be working with Alex while we'll provide and present the session 4 of the Micro MBA. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff, Trevor. Now then, Trevor, we've got some very, very exciting developments today, haven't we? We usually start off with our preamble about what's been going on at university, but it's been particularly exciting this week, hasn't it, as we welcome people to session 4, and we've been talking, haven't we, in recent weeks about all these sort of awards and accolades that the university and the Chester Business School has been receiving recently, and our Faculty of Science, Business and Enterprise, including, you know, winning Business School of the Year North and being first in international study and student support, etc. But we've got some super exciting news to announce, hot off the press, Trevor. In fact, probably one of the first announcements of publicly, I think. So tell us all about it, Trevor.
Yes, last night we were awarded the Business School of the Year, and that is such a huge one for us. And to be nominated was huge, but winning it and becoming the Business School of the Year, just as terrific. You know, really, really fantastic news. Because for us, getting this from Times Higher Education, which is the awards, is like the Oscars of higher education. So that's like we've got the Oscar award. So for us, it's huge, and not just because we've gotten an award of this type, being the Business School of the Year, but again, earning the award. How did we earn it? You know, from lots of stuff we've been doing around sustainability, and which happens to coincide with what we're going to be addressing today. Sustainability, net zero, decarbonization, fantastic work with our partners, the NHS, you know, all other businesses we've been partnering with. So indeed, this is such a wonderful award. And I want to say big congratulations to our students, our partners, and our members of staff. You know, so I want to say thank you and a big congratulations to all of you, and even our alumni and our alumni team, and even those of you who are watching today. Again, you're not part of the Chester Business School story, University of Chester story. You're part of us. You're not part of the family and part of the community. So congratulations to all of you watching and joining us today. Thank you.
That's amazing, Trevor. And you can see right bang in the centre there, Kirsty's holding the trophy there. Obviously, we had Kirsty as a speaker in the last session, and then you can see Kurt there as well on the right hand side, and we had Kurt talking about strategy. And so it's great to see these guys there live winning those awards, and obviously I've been involved with this Micro MBA. But I think what's exciting, Trevor, as well, for our current students that are listening and our alumni, you know, they are part of this amazing award-winning business school now, aren't they? As you know, I just think it's a super achievement, and it really is testament to all the hard work and effort that's been done around you know, reaching and working with businesses, you know, through you know, 34 million pounds worth of grants, decarbonisation, and you know, working with NHS and supporting through incredible systems. Like we've got a digital system we've developed that's used by 200,000 users. So we're actually out there doing real work, and that's to have that recognition from something like the Times High Awards to be Business School of the Year really recognises that. And I think it's super relevant as well for this session around organisational sustainability as well, because we do so much good work around decarbonisation. And our guest Julieanna today is going to be telling us more about some of that work and organisational sustainability a bit more broadly. But we're thrilled to bits, Trevor, aren't we? And it's a wonderful accolade, testament to all that hard work, and fantastic for our current students, prospective students, to be involved and be studying for an award-winning business school, a top business school like this as well.
Absolutely, and it just further, I think it's just a good way to close the year, because at the beginning of the year, during the mid of the year, we actually won the Business School of the Year, the Educate North Award. So this is reiterating it to say, yes, we do earn it. And so not just us here at the University of Chester, but you guys also participating today, we've all won this. And I just know it's just the beginning of many more wonderful things to come, and while we're actually able to make impact. Because for me, not just the award, but the impact we're making to businesses, to communities, and to humanity in general. So really, really good.
Thank you for that, Trevor. So on that front then, we know that, out of the 430 people who have registered so far for the micro MBA, that around 80% of people are interested in studying at Chester, and quite a lot of those are interested in the MBA routes as well, Trevor. So can you tell us a little bit more about those MBA routes, those two? Obviously, one of which you're very much involved with, and then there's another one, isn't there, as well? And given the theme of the day as well around organisational sustainability, it'd be good to hear a little bit more about that, Trevor, from your perspective.
All right, thank you very much for that, Alex. Yes, here at the University of Chester, our MBA program happens to be, we've got a 1-year full-time MBA program, also as well as a 2-year full-time MBA program with placement year. Okay, so you do that for 1 year, and then at the end you get on the placement. That has been really, really popular among students who've been coming here. We've had students coming here, and 2 weeks into starting their 1-year program, they're saying to us, "Oh, can we just get on the 2-year full-time MBA with placement year?" Because people just find it important and relevant, particularly those of us who are who are international students, who think, okay, I want something where I'll be able to gain that UK work experience. This is the right MBA for you as well. And even those of us who are doing just the 1-year full-time MBA program, we still have opportunities to actually link you with businesses. We've had students who've worked with local businesses as part of their research projects. We've had some that have worked with really, really big organizations, non-for-profit, for-profit, individual small businesses. So you're going to have some of these opportunities. So it could be part of an assessment, or it could be part of your dissertation. So that again is there. And some of them are actually doing things with companies within who are quite interested in sustainability practices, or companies coming in from net zero decarbonization, and we also provide even opportunities for our students to be mentored. So for example, I've got MBA students who are currently being mentored by one of our PGR students, who is so much into stuff around circular economy. Julieanna and I were actually working with that student, and is mentoring some of our students on sustainable practices. How they can take some of these ideas, put it into their existing company, or sometimes even take it back to their own countries. So that is also available there. So again, that's ready for you. We also have the work-based MBA. Okay, so the links are out there if you want to join us. The work-based MBA are there. So for those of you I know some of our participants in today's session, or some people will be looking at this video at some other time, you would notice that you've got work experience, you're already working, and you're thinking, okay, how would this be valuable to me? I don't want to take time off. I don't just want to go into school and leave business. You can still do this. Okay, we've got this work-based MBA for you, so you can still work. We've got that under WEBIS, so work-based and integrated studies. So please, by all means, it's there for you, and we're readily available to support you through the process. And if you want to find out more, I'm here as the MBA director. Again, if you're coming from international, the international team is there, and I'm sure Alex will be sharing their details in a minute. You can also reach out to them. if you need to speak with me as the program director, I'm happy to meet with you, talk to you about it, tell you why it is the right program for you. Also, it could be like, oh, I don't think it's the MBA. Again, we've got other fantastic master's programs, other fantastic PG programs you can also enroll in if you're interested. And by all means, I can assure you this, you just come join us, and together let's go create value, let's go create knowledge. And I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful experience. So our MBA program, looking at our curriculum, for example, we tend to ensure that our curriculum is informed by sustainability, sustainable practices. Okay, so all we teach across modules, in our assessments, we do make reps. So we don't just say it, we actually walk it. So by all means, we're looking forward to having you here. And I'm sure that by the time you finish your taster session with Professor Julieanna today, you know that we've got it all wrapped up and ready for you. So thank you very much for that, Alex.
Wonderful words as always, Trevor. So I think, we've got people joining us internationally. Obviously, people can contact international@chester.ac.uk. No, you also know, Trevor, people can drop us a line. You could Google MBA study Chester or MBA work-based study, because we've got people joining us from around the world here that might be interested in, the 1 year MBA or the 2 year. And as you say, Trevor, with all of our master's programs within our faculty, they can be done 1 year or 2 year with that full-time kind of 30-week placement or project. So I think where people are looking to gain that experience in the UK, that's a really good option. And then we've got a lot of people joining us from organisations who are working full-time, maybe a little bit further on the careers, and looking to kind of get that level 7 or master's qualification or MBA. The work-based integrative studies route is a really good one for that as well. All right then, Trevor. So without further ado then, so in terms of, yes, you can still register for the Micro MBA, Trevor. We are live streaming, recording these sessions of Facebook, YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can get access to all the sessions on our learning management system and the quizzes as well. So we're actually going to start off with quiz 1 from next week, Trevor, and then the final quiz will come at the end. So once you complete those 2, you can get the certificate, Trevor. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So that's what it is. So for those of you, I was saying to some students I was talking to earlier, and we're talking about, oh, can I still, I've got people who still want to register. Yes, by all means they can. Okay, so by all means, share the link with your network in your home country, colleagues at work. By all means, they can still register. They can access some of the resources. So presentations, for example, from Professor Court, you can access that. Presentation from CREST can also be accessed. And this as well, they're all recorded. And you can find them in the repository. So accessing that wouldn't be a problem. And get ready for the first quiz, which is going to be sometime next week. So it's not going to be too difficult. I'm sure you'll be fine with that. Okay.
Yeah, you can have multiple attempts as well, Trevor. So if you've been paying attention, it should be no problem.
So even if you don't get it the first time, it's not the end of the world. Just sit back, try it again, go back, look at it. We just want to see that engagement, that participation, and that involvement. That's what we're looking for.
Absolutely. So we've been going on for quite a while now, Trevor. Obviously, people can gauge our excitement about what's going on now at Chester. So without further ado, let's get on to the main topic of the day. And obviously for the learning outcomes, this session, it's going to be around implementing sustainable business practices by integrating the UN Sustainable Development Goals into organisational strategies. Trevor, could you just briefly talk us through this one, Trevor?
Yes. So today, really, which is 29th of November, we're going to have Professor Julieanna Powell Turner talking to us in a few minutes. And also for next week, which is 6th of December, 11:30 a.m. UK time, we're going to have the head of division, Dr. David Akre, who's going to be talking about finance. So why, as managers, as leaders, what sort of ideas, what sort of knowledge of finance do we need to have so that we'll be able to make things happen within our own organizations? So David will be doing that next week, Friday, precisely 11:30 a.m. UK time. So I'm looking forward to you joining on real time so you could actually ask David live questions. So thank you very much. And again, we're going to have one more before Christmas, which is going to be delivered by Kerry. So not a problem at all. Thank you.
Great stuff, Trevor. Right, okay, so let's get on to the main topic of the day. Hello, Julieanna. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to your session today. But just to introduce Professor Julieanna Powell Turner, she's a professor in environmental sustainability. She's the Associate Dean for Research and Innovation within our Faculty of Science, Business and Enterprise. She's also the Director of the Centre for Research into Environmental and Sustainable Transitions, which is CREST. She's taught and researched environmental sustainability for over 2 decades. She has secured considerable external funding and published in the academic and government press and seen numerous PhDs through to completion. She's a legend. She's here today to talk to us about organisational sustainability. Julieanna, welcome and thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to your session.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex, and thank you, Trevor. So welcome everybody today, wherever you may be around the world. For those that know me, I often gallop along at quite a pace. I'm going to sort of present to you over the next 20 minutes around organisational sustainability. So this will probably be even more than a gallop today, but I will try and cover those important points that I can. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what it is, balancing growth with profitability with companies, maybe trying to align some of those business strategies with UN SDGs, look at some challenges and opportunities, successes and best practice. So you might actually ask what it is. Okay, so it's a really important governance and management practice used by organizations to kind of synthesize a paradox between the 3 contradictory and complementary pillars of sustainability. And this is to create a long-term shared value to minimize harm and mitigate financial risks. So profit, people, planet, environment, economic, social, depending on which side of the fence that you sit on. Why is it important? Okay, so there's been a real tidal wave of societal views in recent years, which has set a much higher bar for the way organisations interact with their investors, employees, customers, suppliers or in communities, as well as the impact they have on the natural environment to enhance overall performance. The impact of these changes are really likely to increase, as yesterday's actions are probably almost certain to be judged by tomorrow's higher standards of performance and accountability, where more authentic and holistic approaches are required. So taking such an authentic approach has prepared many organisations to rethink their vision, their purpose, their strategies, and even their traditional business models. Other companies are taking a much more holistic approach, requiring them to rewire their kind of structures, their policies, their culture, their systems and processes to align with sort of the ever increasing voluntary and reporting frameworks to achieve their ambitions and performance objectives. And these can often be in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, so the UN SDGs, and the transformational journey, including kind of the reassessment and realignment processes, is likely to take many organisations probably 5 to 10 years, and these are the larger organisations with probably significant progress likely identifiable within sort of 5 to 8. And this isn't even considering smaller organisations who don't have the resource, so that will take them much longer. I think what's clear in organisational sustainability that it's kind of, it's that new level of authenticity, leadership and capability which is needed in synthesizing, but also accepting the ongoing tension and paradox between those complementary and contradictory and complementary financial, human, social and environmental pillars. So, if we think about organizations and the measures they're going to take, how do they find an equilibrium between growth and responsibility? And it's a crucial discussion point actually in sustainability, and I'm sure this is discussed frequently in your MBA program, Trevor. Companies often find that they can synthesize their financial objectives where they're kind of in ethical imperatives, although it can often lead to restrained, sort of progressive practices. But what's important here is a pathway to profitability. It doesn't need to compromise environmental integrity nor societal welfare, while sort of opening up sort of fresh avenues for innovation and consumer engagement. And they're not exclusive, they're not mutually exclusive. If you think about some of those big brands, that integrate their priorities and gain sort of resilience, trust, and market relevance. There are a lot of them. Think about Patagonia. They've been going around for years. It's got a loyal following. But there's also smaller companies as well, that base their ideals and their growth and responsibilities just like the larger companies. And I think those common obstacles, that organizations face include that short-term profit focus, limited resources, regulatory frameworks which are very complex, and this is because of global standards which vary, and the compliance burdens, resistance to change, where you might have like cultural and organizational inertia, and then measurement difficulties, inconsistent metrics and frameworks for sustainability globally. So if you think about the UN SDGs, there's a real global push towards, they provide a really comprehensive structure that not only sort of dissects the pressing global issues, but they also act as a real compass for both government and corporate entities, in sort of executing their sustainability-driven business strategies. And the significance of aligning sort of business operations with these goals can't really be overstated. There's also the inner development goals, and actually we don't often talk about the inner development goals. I do, but business don't. There's 5 dimensions, there's 23 different skills and qualities associated with the IDGs, and the main difference between the UN SDGs, so the core SDGs, and the inner development goals, is that the UN SDGs, they address the global societal challenges, while the IDGs are much more of a framework to sort of help people work on societal challenges. So moving on to how businesses align their sort of strategies with the UN SDGs, it provides, or they provide a real powerful sort of blueprint for how organizations, small or large, can strive to balance their profitability with global responsibility. It can be really difficult to articulate clear objectives, within the SDGs, with those 17 SDGs, but those that do, often see transformation, and they often grow a culture of real accountability and sustainability. So essentially prioritizing, business as leaders in sort of the global movement towards a greener future. And, companies that align their SDGs with their business strategies, again, we've seen enhanced competitiveness. It can be innovation catalysts, so encourage development, of new technologies and processes, often trust and reputation. It can build stronger relationships, and also risk mitigation as well. It can reduce exposure to the 3, SD frameworks. Sustainable operations, and I am going at quite a gallop here, so I do appreciate that, and there will be a time for questions after. So I'd like to mention sustainable operations and what constitutes sustainable operations. And this really takes me back to my previous institution, where I used to ask students, what sustainability meant to them. And I received a really different response to what I expected, bearing in mind they were all kind of military officers. And the question about sustainable operations also received a very military kind of response. But it doesn't matter what sector, or industry you're in. Sustainability is often part of any organization's operational ethos. For some, this might be a transition that involves applying sustainability principles across various functions, which might bolster efficiency, innovation, and even interoperability. And I think, if you can embrace these principles, and I appreciate it's easier said than done and takes time, organizations are positioning themselves not only for compliance with regulations, but also for that kind of lasting competitive advantage in what we're seeing as rapidly evolving markets. And I won't go into sort of the detail. We could probably speak about that shortly. I think just, there are a couple of examples that we might be able to pick on, both small companies in the UK that really, ensured they've put sustainable operations into their business. Okay, so organizational frameworks, what are they? Okay, so they're part of sustainable operations, and I think they require really deep, understanding, and companies really need to ensure that they align with their values, their goals, and the principles, you know, whether this be the UN SDGs or whether this be the frameworks that are here on this slide. And choosing the right framework is really essential as they guide strategic decision making, potentially stakeholder engagement and reporting, and ultimately, you know, they're tools, you know, that help businesses measure and communicate their environmental, social, and economic impacts. And, you know, they might include CSR, environmental social governance, which is, you know, it's a fairly new framework actually, which looks at how investors evaluate how a business integrates ESG practices into its operations, and it looks at those risks and opportunities associated with these factors and different environmental metrics. So slightly different to some of the other frameworks. You've got life cycle analysis, you know, you've got B Corp companies and various ISO frameworks as well. And I think B Corp companies don't often get a lot of airtime, you know, but actually they really do focus on sort of balancing profit with purpose and the assess of businesses' social and environmental impacts around the workforce, the engage with the community, diversity, you know, and economic empowerment. So I know there's a real growth in the B Corp movement. So, you know, transforming challenges into opportunities when it comes to sustainable operations. As I said, you know, on the third slide, it can actually take many, many years. It's not something you can easily switch on and switch off, because if you think about the whole value chain, you know, of a company from that initial thought, design, product, manufacturing, you know, to final disposal, and that whole supply chain, and trying to actually get beyond that tier 1 and 2 supply chain as well, it's very, very difficult. But, you know, some of those, transforming any challenge into an opportunity, you know, is a real hallmark of a committed organization. And they can, you know, often harness the pressures that are posed by sustainability demands to kind of innovate, and I'd like to say sort of redefine their market position. You know, so when companies approach these challenges, and I'm thinking like some of the big, you know, the Bosches, the Reynolds, the Teslas, the Philips of these world, you know, they're actually capitalizing on the opportunities for real differentiation, and it leads not just to sustainability but to really long-term competitive positioning and market leadership. And there's various models. There's a circular, you know, economy model, so, you know, which we've moved from the linear. There's other examples, you know, so like if I think about in terms of transforming challenges into opportunities, and this is very arguable, maybe some around urban mobility transformation, you know, so if we think of some of the big cities where you've got urban congestion and emissions from transportation, you know, companies such as like Bird and Lime, they've sort of introduced, you know, micro-mobility solutions to reduce urban congestion and lower emissions and provide affordable transit options. So, you know, this was a challenge, but ultimately, you know, this has been turned into an opportunity by those successful companies. Just got a couple of slides to go. So moving from opportunities to best practice. So I'd like to say, you know, the successful implementation probably of sustainability is really contingent on an organization, and it really requires a strategic approach that aligns with those environmental and social goals. You know, it can be around cultivating leadership buy-in, it can be around engaging with stakeholders and transparency, you know, and collaborating with partners. It's around sort of measuring and reporting progress as well. So using some of those frameworks that I sort of discussed earlier, and also maybe, you know, like the Global Reporting Initiative, the Carbon Disclosure Project, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Boards, you know, they go on, you know, maybe setting various benchmarks for accountability and progress, but also fostering a culture of sustainability, which is very difficult in many organizations and can be. You know, how do we go about fostering a culture of sustainability? Well, we need to get everybody on board. Actually, you know, it's that can-do attitude, communicate, incentivize maybe initiatives, employee training, those toolbox talks, and then probably, you know, innovate for sustainability, you know, things around product innovation, business model transformation, so moving from that product as a service or, to pay per use systems that encourage sort of resource efficiency, and then R&D. But I think best practice is great, and to achieve this, an organization really does have to measure its success. And again, I think accurate assessment of sustainability really hinges on some of those robust measurement tools. Can be difficult to measure if you haven't, implemented those tools, or you don't have the data, which is another issue in itself with AI. Not my subject, but I know that's driving an awful lot of these frameworks here today. But actually levering some of these defined metrics, engaging the impact, and also adopting sort of recognised reporting standards, organisations, can ensure more transparency. But they can also sort of establish credibility as well amongst their stakeholders. And there's various metrics, environmental metrics, social metrics, sort of governance metrics, sort of the community impact as well, and ultimately the economic impact. So the treatable bottom line at the end of the day, which is really where I started today, and it's balancing profitability and the environment. So I think sort of in wrapping up the discussion on sustainable business, it's really clear that I guess the future hinges on organizations of all sizes, whether you're a micro, whether you're an SME, whether you're a large global organization, and really sort of ushering in the principles of sustainability that are sort of integral, to any company's strategy and their operations. And I think, many organizations do have the power, to shape the future that's really both economically sort of viable, but also socially responsible. But it takes time, and money to do so. And that's everything from me. Thank you, Alex. And my voice just about held up. So.
Oh, that's amazing, Julieanna. There's so many points here, and I jotted down a few things I'd like to ask. But obviously, I want to open up to our audience as well for any questions or comments. So please feel free to put those questions and comments in the chat, in the comments, and then we'll pick those up and feature those in the show. But just whilst we're waiting for those to come through, Trevor, did you have any comments or questions for Julieanna before I dive in?
I think we've got one already from the general comments on StreamYard. I don't know if you've seen one. If you want to put that up, I think as a comment, elevate your expertise with. Okay, I think it's just talking about some of the stuff we're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we could mention that one. So this is from our visiting prof, is Ahmet. So he's saying about elevating your expertise with a masterclasses in the sustainability management report and GRI, essential for advancing your career in sustainability. Could you explain that one, Trevor?
Yes, and this is something we're doing because as part of our MBA program here at the University of Chester, what we do is we try to look at the society, look at the environment, look at contemporary issues. And so where we cannot now develop a new course or module to address it, we use master classes to support our program, to ensure that our program are up to date and we're providing value for our students. So Ahmed, for example, is a visiting professor here as part of our MBA program. Now what we're doing, we're having a master class on sustainability management and reporting. So what we're doing now, we're telling our MBA students, all right, okay, how do you manage sustainability management? What's it all about? How do you report it? And Ahmed is bringing some interesting AI tools, which is going to be using to tell our students in terms of how you can do it, how you can get along with reporting, sustainability management, and all of that stuff. So that's actually what we're doing. And it's also an opportunity for people where you think, oh, I don't know anything about sustainability. I was thinking of becoming or doing something else. And all of a sudden, people have been able to see it as a new opportunity in terms of career. And I'm sure Julieanna will be able to talk more about that. I remember coming to Julieanna, it was a few months ago, a year ago, saying, all right, how do I understand more around LCA, life cycle assessment? Because I saw the need for it, and it was just like a new career opportunity. So Julieanna, I don't know if you want to talk about that, because that's an opener.
Yeah, I think, I grasp any opportunity, be it sustainability or not. But, I think I mentioned, a lot of those frameworks and life cycle assessment, life cycle analysis, whatever you want to call it, that sits under I guess the ISO bands, the international standards. So you've got 14,040, which guides life cycle analysis, but it's used kind of globally, really, because it looks at the whole, it's a kind of what could you call it? Like a methodological cornerstone. I guess it kind of traces the products, not just environmental impact, but there's, also social LCA as well. Impact basically from cradle to grave. I'm always careful to use cradle to grave nowadays with the circular economy and cradle to cradle, but cradle to grave, and it kind of highlights those optimization opportunities, and it does look at the inputs and the outputs of everything that goes into a product or a service at the beginning of the process, and basically what comes out at the end. So it's a really kind of decision making framework. Very useful for everything, whether it be buildings, whether it be for chickens, because we do a lot with chickens, equally, whether it's to do with cars. So LCA is a great tool, but one of many, Trevor.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Another question, Alex from Clinton.
I love questions from Clinton. So Clinton's asking, Julieanna, how much effect does CSR have, corporate social responsibility have on organisational sustainability?
Oh golly! So it depends, Clinton. It depends on the size of the organisation and the organisation itself ultimately. So I think if we think about CSR in itself, that's also come a long way. Since it was first sort of introduced like several decades ago. But it really kind of, I guess, it encompasses efforts to like integrate sort of the ethical and the eco-conscious sort of practices of a business into their core business strategy, and an effective program, an effective CSR program contributes really positively, I guess, to all those stakeholders. So all those stakeholders associated with that business, that organization, as well as adding value to the organization. And as I said earlier, it is actually kind of, I guess, related to environmental social governance. Now there's that kind of real overlap. So it's good for brand, it's good for reputation, it's good for income. Some of those can be quite difficult to measure, Clinton, and like many frameworks, it's voluntary as well. So I guess it's just how much you want to put into it. But I see it as positive because sustainability is core to everything I do. I hope that answers your question.
Great answer. Just kind of on the related point, Julieanna, you mentioned the triple bottom line, this idea of kind of people, planet, profit, or whichever order you want to put those in. But actually, in terms of the order, it would seem that, a lot of the large organizations in recent years have, put out these ambitious mission statements around, the commitment to the environment, sustainability. But it would seem that in some cases in recent years, perhaps because of the economic situation, that those statements have been quietly retracted or watered down a little bit. So I just wonder what your thoughts are on achieving this balance, and why organisations would start to backtrack on these things.
So I mean, it's really interesting what we say about people, profit, planet, and that's definitely the business background, individual, whereas I would say environment, social, and economic. Right. And that's often in the sustainability sphere. So we completely turn it around. You could add culture, to that as well. So, from a kind of, I guess, an environmental, social and economic perspective, businesses, many businesses have had to backtrack simply a lot of the time due to capacity, to resource, expertise. Actually, many of them are fighting to survive. We've seen all those price hikes, around energy security, around some of those geopolitical issues from a global perspective as well. We've seen the kind of supply chains kind of fall apart when it comes to materials and sort of some of those criticalities of materials, and some of those, those supply chains being switched off, which have become, of course, for companies, that's more important to them as an economic business, to provide jobs, to provide outputs. Equally, the environment is, it's absolutely key, but it can sometimes come second, Quite often, and I'm sure many people on this call would agree, it often comes behind those business benefits. But as I said, it does really bring those business benefits when you think about the value chain, the core values, the creation, the organizational creation, the recyclability, remanufacturing of those materials. So it varies business on business. And then there's also lots of whitewashing and greenwashing and social washing, out there. So companies making claims, but actually aren't true. So, it's very, if you're in the business day in, day out, like like many of us are on the call here today, you kind of understanding, and you're informed, but, lots of individuals aren't. And equally, if the business is pushing out, that it's compliant with this, that, and the other, who are we supposed to know? And lots of individuals, of course, don't care. They might actually care about where their product is coming from, and they might want to know about the provenance of that product. I've digressed a little bit. I'm sorry, but it's often, it can still be down to that sort of that triple bottom line. Actually, but we now, many organizations have got chief sustainability officers. They never used to have CSOs at all. So we've made real ground, within this sector, and ultimately should be important for all of us, because it should be kind of core to everything that we do, whether it's around food, water, energy. So very long answer to, I hope that kind of answered your question and a little bit more.
It does. And it's really interesting about those new roles as well. Some of those new roles around sustainability officers and looking after these social aspects of the business and circular economy are some of the fastest growing roles, aren't they? So we always say, at the University of Chester, we're trying to prepare students not of jobs of today, but the jobs of the future. So I think this is why these topics are so important, aren't they, as these job roles expand as well. What do you think, Trevor?
Yes, I agree with you. For us, I think it's just that sort of contemplative thinking where we're looking into the future, what is there, and again, looking at the way things are going now, we can see the competition, competitions, and we know our students that we're preparing, we're supporting, they're going to be getting into a very intense sort of like competitive environment with other, for example, MBA students. So how do you stand out? How do you bring about that sort of differentiation? And the knowledge of sustainability can just be that stuff you're looking for to be able to showcase yourself and tell that potential employer or even create that business for yourself. So I think that's what we always think about, and that's why we don't hesitate to set up some of these master classes, get people like Julieanna in, other experts in to come speak to our students about this is what we're going to, and this is what we're looking forward to achieving, and we even make sure that we speak even to potential employers. To come. Potential employers does inform our assessments. We don't just set assessments to say, all right, what do you think, Trevor? What do you think as researchers? We go back to sector, we go back to industry. So, all right, what's the future looking like for you? Do you want to speak to our assessment? Do you want to look at what we're setting out to students? Because these are the people we want to bring out that you want to employ. So what sort of knowledge, what sort of skills do you want them to have? And that is something we actually look at here at the University of Chester, particularly with the MBA program. And I think, yes. So I agree with you, and I think we've got another question. Is it a question or comment from?
Oh, it's just a comment from Ahmet there. Yeah, he was just saying thanks for sharing the valuable, insightful information. Yeah, it really has been. I've got a question, Julianna, about culture. Or you mentioned that briefly, and this has been a thread so far. Kurt obviously was talking about strategy in the session 2, and then Kirsty was talking about organisational culture, and she had a really interesting quote that was talking about culture eating strategy for breakfast. So I just wondered, from that perspective, thinking about how important culture is to organisational sustainability ultimately.
I think it's key. It's absolutely key, because many organisations, many large businesses have been around for many, many years. And a lot of manufacturing industries in particular, they do things in a certain way. I've been in, like the McLarens of this world, the Ricoh, some of the biggest manufacturing companies, BMW, but they've had to adapt and change, their culture internally. But it can actually be quite slow. Small companies, I said earlier, they don't often have the resource and the capacity, but because there are a few decision makers, they can turn things around quite quickly. Whereas in larger organizations, it's getting those individuals, on board. So actually, I think, it's leadership from the top, but equally it needs to funnel down what I always call it the chain of command, ultimately from top to bottom, but equally from bottom to top, because every single person, doesn't matter who you are within that organization, they are part of that cultural change. And if one individual, kind of breaks that chain of command, then ultimately it can all fall apart. So you have to have everybody, involved in that what I would call that sort of chain of command to ensure that you are changing culturally. But it can be kind of part of your core values. And I think we're seeing that in some of the really, I know you do a lot with kind of AI and digital, with the younger audience, but they're really switched on. They want to know about this stuff. They're really interested in it because they know it's going to potentially affect them, in the longer term. So I think culture is absolutely key, and that sort of intergenerational equity part as well within businesses. It's key.
Really good. We've got a question here from Louise. It's more of a comment, but a good talking point, I think. She's asking about finding the right metrics is a challenge. There's an interesting open source framework for measuring value categories, e.g. financial value, consumer value, human value, social value, etc. as well. You mentioned about measurement earlier, Julieanna, and its criticality as well. So I don't know if your thoughts on these kind of open source frameworks as well, or you give us a little bit more about this idea of measurement, which without it, we can't do these things properly, can we? I guess.
No, and I think we always say that, don't we? You can't measure it if you haven't got the data. So how do you improve? And I think that's always been difficult with environmental metrics and equally social metrics as well. How do we measure those metrics? When businesses go out into the community, I guess the revenue and from those, or the money the business is putting into the community, it can be difficult. But there are open source frameworks. I'm not sure I would trust many of them, to be frank. There are some of the EU sources are. I've got more faith, and trust in as well. Maybe government organisations have, developed them. But it's a difficult one. Metrics are always difficult. But actually, if we don't have them, you don't know how you're necessarily improving. So going back to what I said about, some of those ISO type frameworks, international standards, and the B Corp, certification is a really good example, actually, of a framework where you can get clear measurement over time around, in particular, around sort of social criteria for worker benefits, for example, Louise, community engagement, sort of economic empowerment, ESG, scope 1 and 2 emissions as well, in terms of all businesses trying to measure their scope 1 and 2 and 3 emissions. It's really easy to measure, like water, waste, energy, very, very simple. It is more difficult when it comes to the individual and the effects on that individual. So, I agree with Louise, that finding the right metrics is a challenge and can be quite challenging depending on your organisation, your industry, and your sector. But they are key. They're absolutely key to going forward.
Great stuff. We've got about 5 minutes left, I think, if anyone's got any other questions. But just whilst we're waiting for that, I wanted to just come back. I thought this was really powerful idea of leaky to loopy, Julieanna, because when you look at it in those terms, it looks like a bit of a no-brainer, this, doesn't it? It's like you are wasting all this stuff that potentially, you could be saving money, you could be creating new products and services, you could be, it really looks quite obvious, doesn't it? But I suppose in the cold light of the boardroom, if the management of the organisation are overriding what's happening here and saying, actually, you know what, in the end, profit. I mean, I suppose you look at these geopolitical factors, like, for example, Donald Trump come into power, who doesn't, has particular views on the environment, how that then twists that view. But when you see it in the view from Leaky to Loopy, for example, and we see it within SDGs, we think, well, this is really obvious on a number of levels. But sometimes those forces, and perhaps I might even describe it as kind of old school thinking, kind of overpower that positive message. I just wonder if you've got any thoughts.
Yeah, and I think Catherine, who's a friend of mine, and she's very well known in the circular economy field, and for her podcast, she's brilliant. She's made this very, very simple from that traditional linear take, make, dispose, to in effect the circular economy. And Ellen MacArthur, of course, has done huge amounts of work around the loopy, the circular economy, as has Walter Stahl, as well. And it's very easy to measure or to understand the kind of the circular economy kind of schematic especially from the technical side, because you can see those loops as they get bigger. When you recycle, you remanufacture, you reuse. But organizations have to do this. What they can't do actually is they can't do it alone in isolation. It works. It's part of that systems framework where organizations have to work together. So think about, Renault, which is a good example, and many will know about Renault on the call, that, actually they remanufacture most of their engine parts, have done for years, and they know where their cars end up with their end of life. So for them, it's a lot cheaper and more sustainable to remanufacture many of those engine parts. So, a lot of them, there's no obsolescence. Many of the parts are quite similar also in a lot of the models, so they haven't got different parts. I've lost where I'm going with this, actually. Completely.
On that front, you sometimes the people put pressure on organisations. If you think about Apple, for example, who these products aren't very kind of repairable anymore, are they? But they come under pressure, don't they, from people, from groups, to make the things so that people can repair them, for example. So sometimes if that's not embedded in corporate culture, profit has been, by making a closed system that's more profitable. Sometimes these organisations do get consumer and political pressure on them, don't they, to make the products a bit more sustainable.
They do, but actually it's really interesting then what you said about, remanufacturing, reusing, etc. But, companies have to get smart very quickly, because I'll very briefly touch on this, because I know we've only got a couple of minutes, but I do a lot around rare earth elements, critical materials, and actually they're in equipment and they're used 24/7, and actually they're only in small pockets in various areas around the world, and actually many of these mines, that the operators could switch the tap tomorrow ultimately, and the whole supply chain would stop, so we wouldn't have access to a lot of those kind of critical materials. So actually it's in a company's best interest when they can to kind of recover, recycle, find like-for-like products. And I appreciate it's really difficult to find like-for-like products because they're physical and chemical makeup, of certain elements. I absolutely understand that. But actually, if companies don't start doing more, there could be long-term issues down the line. And this isn't just around critical materials. This is around simple utilities as well. I don't like to talk about fossil fuels, but, fossil fuels, renewables, we are in the hands of the gods, in many respects. So actually, it's really important to adapt, this kind of circular economy loop, but it has to be done with many, many companies, because it, as I say, it can't be done alone. And what do we always say? That one man's waste is another person's treasure, ultimately.
Well, I've thrown away mobile Android devices and others and end up in the hands of in the other countries, don't they, in the third world and so forth.
Oh, well, so when you said thrown away, then I was like, you mean you recycled them, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely,
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's
that they are disposed of, but really the goal should be that they go to somebody else and get repaired and reused, etc.
And Trevor, I think,
sorry, Julieanna.
No, I was just going to say, and I think, mobile phones are a great example where everyone, it's a new shiny device, but actually much of those functionalities, could be embedded within the current models. And actually, this doesn't always happen, but it could happen and should happen, but that's another discussion for another day.
Oh, it really is a big one, that, isn't it? Trevor, did you want to comment on that, or you got another question?
No, I just wanted to say, ask Juliana if there's one simple thing you want to tell people who are new to organizational sustainability. What would that be? That simple stats, say, I'll start from here, because some people will say, oh, it's already too complicated. I'm not sure where to start from. I'm a small business owner. I'm this. So what would just be that key takeaway for them?
In terms of where you find out what it is, you mean, Trevor? Organizational sustainability. Yes. So I think, like everybody's friend, not that I should mention it, probably I'm here, Google is everybody's best friend, at the end of the day, not ChatGPT and all those others necessarily. But, ultimately, if you want to start somewhere, I would always suggest using simple Google to try and understand where you can get that information from, especially if you're a micro business, or an SME, if you don't have that capacity. But the thing is, there is so much resource, out there, so much resource, and you don't necessarily know what's right or wrong. But the EU is another great platform, for trying to understand what's required from an organizational sustainability perspective, and networking to people, be part of, different programs, whether it be university programs or whether it be, programs led by your local government. Just, network as much as you can. Ultimately, LinkedIn is a fantastic resource, for asking questions, for getting involved ultimately. So, there's not really any excuse apart from time. Time is very precious, and I know we're almost there now, 4 minutes to go. But I think, that's what I would suggest in terms of taking away. But as I said, kind of from the beginning, it's really important for governance and for the management, for organizations when it comes to, the environment, the social and the economic and the cultural pillar of sustainability.
Brilliant stuff. Last question, Julianna. What's the future of all this stuff, do you think? What's going to happen over the next 5-10 years from your perspective?
I think there's just going to be a more of a growing need, Alex, actually, as people become very nervous, of the current situation. If we think about, the broader aspects of what's going on, in the world, whether it be around, I talked about, the geopolitical risks and tensions that are on our doorstep. Ways of learning, are changing. So, in terms of a lot of this, what we do now is online. So that the way we present is changing. And I think what is great, Alex and Trevor, actually, you can talk to a much bigger audience with platforms, like this. So I think because of, digital transformation and various platforms that are available, I think this message will only grow. And actually it's not just about manufacturing, nature is really important, and nature-based solutions, actually, when we come to think about the social aspects of sustainability and overall our well-beings. So there's going to be a growth and a need. What I don't think it will be called is sustainability, because sustainability should be mainstream. It should be mainstream. We shouldn't have to refer to it, actually. So I would just say, watch this space. It's a very exciting space to work in, because it covers so many areas, from what did Kurt, our dean, say, from A to Z, actually, actually. So
that's amazing, Julianna. Thank you so much. There's so much food for thought there. It's incredible. And thanks so much for giving up your time and wisdom, and being so generous with your answers. And obviously, as you say, people can find us on LinkedIn, and you've kindly provided your details there, Julianna, as well, which is amazing. Okay, so just to wrap this one up, actions for our audience there is obviously making sure you register and put in your diary all the session dates. Take a look at Chester's other study options at undergraduate or postgraduates. Phone us on LinkedIn, Facebook or YouTube, and posting to social media you've joined the Micro MBA. And we will see you for session 5, which is on finance with Dr. David Akwai on the 6th of December, 11:30 UK time. Trevor, any final words?
No, I just want to say thank you so much to Julianna. Thank you to the participants today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all again on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
See you then. Bye, everyone.
Don't